worked out, and I'm glad that we connected.
I am too, Brad.
Yes, thank you, and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
Yeah, it's been a little while, hasn't it?
It has. It has been.
Yes, but I'm so glad. But thank you for joining the authors table, Gil, and yeah, there you go. There, there, perfect.
That's better. All
Yeah,
right.
all right. Now, Gil. Now, who is Gil Hudson as an author?
Gosh, Gil Hudson as an author is, I guess now 79-year-old male who used to practice law and retired in the villages and finally finished a project that he started decades ago.
Well, fantastic! Congratulations. You look good for your age too.
Thanks. Thanks. Still good.
That's
I'm
right.
fortunate.
That's right. Now, do you have like a special moment, Gil, growing up, like when you thought of yourself as a writer?
No, I didn't. I didn't capture that thought as a writer till many decades later, while I was attending the 1980 Republican National Convention in Detroit.
Mm. So that was your turning point.
Yeah, it formulated the idea that just got a hold of me so much that I decided that I needed to start putting it down on paper.
Now, what about that convention really stuck with you?
Well, forgetting all the politics of it, okay, it was my first time there. I had to run for election to be able to get there. And it was at Cobo Hall in Detroit. I was from Virginia, and it was very difficult to even get to be elected as a delegate, but I was successful. But during one part of it, back then in 1980, they had no digital cameras, they had no wireless anything, and
Hmm.
I went to go to the restroom, and I went down this hall, and above me was all this scaffolding, and tons and tons of wire were held up by that, and so they didn't have to put it on the ground. And all the photographers, there were hundreds of photographers just taking pictures of us all the time. Anyway, they were constantly unloading their film and throwing those little cans that film used to come into
Oh, sure.
on the floor. Well, I couldn't see the floor. There were so many. I was scuffling through there to get back. I said, "This is dangerous." So anyway, I go in, I go back, and as I came back to the huge arena and the thousands of people, it just hit me. I wondered what George Washington would think. And so after the convention and whatnot, I started keeping notes. I think, it'd be fun to write as though George Washington were here today, as though he were with us. And so I played with that and made some
Hmm.
notes and wrote them down, and I kept adding to the notes, but I was busy practicing law and whatnot. And so anyway, I moved to the villages many decades later, and I found my notes, and I started going over them. Well, uh, you won't believe this, but my niece name is Jenny Hale. And Jenny has sold millions of books and had several of her books made into Hallmark movies. So I called her. And Jenny said, "Uncle Gil, just write it. Just start writing. Just don't stop. Just start writing." She says, "I'm only going to give you one clue. Don't tell a story. Show me a story.
Mm.
Put down what you see, not what you think." And that helped, and so I got it done. I sent it off to her. She liked it, and we played with it, and that's how the first book came into being.
Now, do you feel that was like your inspiration or motivation to become an author at that time?
You know, at that time, I was fixated with the idea of just physically being able and mentally being able to produce a product.
Hmm.
But when I got in the villages here, I let a couple people read it, and then they put me on to the Writers League of the Villages, and then a couple more people read it, and they said, "You ought to try to have this published." I think that was the first time that I actually thought, "Well, wow,
Yeah.
I could actually." I was just trying to accomplish a feat that I
Yes.
didn't know I could do.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was when it just hit me that I could this might could actually happen.
Now, Gil, was it difficult for you to start writing your book?
Not really, because there's a lot of writing involved in practicing law, and I spent 40 years as a hearing officer for the state of Virginia, as well as having a practice. So I had to write lots of opinions. So as part of that little deal there, um, I was required to go to a writing school.
Ah,
They wanted their opinions to be certain format and so on. But
yes,
but and even though that doesn't bleed over perfectly well, it gave me a lot of tools.
right.
And I was really pretty good at dialogue. I'd taken so many depositions and whatnot. So as you know, writing is is a lot of dialogue. So I'm
Yes.
pretty good at that.
And plus too, you have already had the background in research too, so that came easy. I'm assuming too, right?
Oh yeah, I researched everything I could about George Washington,
Yes,
and that was the fun part is putting all these little details into the book. Like a lot of people don't know that George never went to school,
that's true.
and he was raised to be the guy who was going to run the farms. And yet his mother educated him just really, really well. And obviously, we know he was very intelligent.
Oh, absolutely. Now, now, now you have a love of history and politics.
Yep.
Now, in your first novel called Reviving George Washington. Now, the POTUS 1 series, now, for the people that don't know what POTUS means, can you please tell them?
Yeah, President of the United States.
That's correct. Yes, and then that's the first series.
Hmm.
Now it's a thrilling historical fiction series which our first president learns of our current state of 2025.
Exactly.
Now, can you go into a little detail of your first book, Gil?
Yeah, first book is divided in two parts. So the first part it sets the stage. The first half of the book shows George Washington back in the last year of his actual life, and also meeting this doctor who his father spent many many years in Egypt as a physician, learning the ways of the Egyptians and learning about the mummifying
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And eventually, I of course can't go into great detail, but eventually, he George convinces him to be one of his patients when the time comes,
What a
and
connection, huh?
a connection, yeah. And so that's the fiction, but everything else in the first half of the book is real. And then the second half of the book flips forward to 2025, and lo and behold, the same family of doctors that had his body to begin with now run a cryogenics research, and they've got 10 bodies that they call their ancient bodies. But over the years, the names have been taken off, and they really don't know who they have.
That could be scary.
Yeah. And then these bodies start to matriculate, they are monitored all the time. All of a sudden, they're changing and they're coming back fast, and they have to deal with what are we going to do? Can we revive any of these? And the first couple don't make it, but of course, you have to figure that George does.
That's right, absolutely. He's strong.
Yeah.
now, now your next novel. Now that's transforming George Washington.
Yeah. Well, we end the first novel by him looking at the nurses who want to know his name, and he says, "My name is George Washington." So the second book is all of a sudden, and actually, the second and the third book are the most fun, I think, because we're getting to see how George reacts to what he's seeing.
Mm-hmm.
To not scare him, they've got him in a room that looks very similar to his old room back in the
Ah,
days, and they're dressing in these costumes and whatnot. But he catches on pretty quick.
oh yeah.
And and it isn't long before George tires of this education. They've got modules of information and they're constantly talking to him, and after a while he just kind of tires of that, and he wants to get loose to get back to Mount Vernon, and
Mm.
they can't let him get back to Mount Vernon. But he does get away and breaks in to Mount Vernon to steal back the gold coins he had left there centuries ago.
Now, see, I can definitely see this as a movie.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, and I've tried to figure out how to promote it. But everything I learned about doing that kind of a thing is that if you got about $20,000 you want to give somebody, they will help you out. You can't believe how much they're going. It's going to be a movie tomorrow if you believe them.
That's right. That's right.
But I get, oh, so many people read it now, and everybody's saying this would be a little series. This would work really good. We have a lot of humor in the books too.
And I think that that's a nice twist too, because you can see a lot of our good movies that have that also. If they can cover all the the crying, the laughter, the joy, the whole thing, it's a great it's a great piece.
Yeah, we have a little. I like to tell people there's this little episode where they get him out in a car the first time, and somebody runs out and washes the window, and he wants to know why they did that and why he paid them. He said, "Well, that's how they make their money." And so George then looks at him and says, "Well, you shouldn't let him do it. You didn't ask him." And well, he might have scratched my car. He said, "Oh, well then you can shoot them. Where's your gun?" You have to apply that how things were handled back then to how they're
Absolutely.
handled now. And they've got to constantly work on that attitude of his of that. He's operating off a different set of value system,
Absolutely.
and
Especially the vehicle.
oh yeah, which he constantly calls his carriage.
Carriage, yes.
Yeah, really.
I guess you can put the horsepower in a different perspective then, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Now your third book in the series is called The Rise of George Washington.
yeah.
Now, now, now George is in different circumstances, and he definitely has some challenges ahead, doesn't he?
He does, Brad. If you want to look at the first book, we figure out how to get him back, and the second book, he becomes wealthy because he now possesses 2,000 gold coins, which are worth about $25,000 a piece on today's market. And then the third book, he gets fame because he is away from them. He's gone away. He's gone to West Virginia, which, by the way, if you know him, he surveyed West Virginia as a young man.
And
And
because he was it was a
a surveyor.
yes, that's correct. Yes, yes, yes.
And so he likes it. He likes the forest. He likes the trees. He likes the horses. He likes the lumber. But he runs into the Chinese who are trying to corner the market, and he decides he's not going to let them do that. And so anyway, some people get kidnapped, and he saves them, and he gets on TV, and suddenly he's now back. He's well known because of his name, and he's got plenty of money, and now he's got fame.
Yes, and another way.
Yes, right.
Yes. Now, like when you're writing these books, Gil, what kind of what kind of research are you doing, or are you just sort of just going along with the prior book? Like what kind of stories are you in your mind putting together?
Well, it's interesting because I actually had the first book completely done and realized that I couldn't finish what I had started because it would be too long. So I stopped it with him coming back, but I already had the thoughts for the second book. But it was a bit of luck because, like with the coins, oh, I can now, because the first book isn't published yet, go back and set the stage in the first book so that when you find the coins later on, he'd already seen him putting them there in the first place. And so the first two books were kind of my first thought. Let's get
Mm-hmm.
him back. Let's react to him and so on. And then the third book, which I think most people like the most, two reasons. One, he kind of falls in love with this girl named Hey Martha, by the way,
Ah.
who's his handler who leaves with him. and the the fact that he is now confronting a problem that exists today with the interplay between two large countries and the influence of another foreign country in America, and you see how his feelings and his upbringing and his thoughts and patriotism play out, and so it sets the stage for the fourth book, which is when you've got fame and power and a recognizable name. Guess who gets appointed to Congress when a congressman dies in West Virginia? And it's George.
That's
And
right.
that's where the old fourth book comes in, and that's where all the so it becomes a political thriller with a lot of people, and that book is called uh, "The Return of
The
George
return,
Washington."
yes. Hmm.
So anyway, and a lot of people don't like him. The powers to be, the people at hand. He didn't like political parties, period. And that's a true statement. He didn't. He never wanted there to be any. And so he's not going to play by any of the rules. But he is very adept at moving an agenda and convincing people and forming groups that'll support him.
But he's running into some difficult situations, though, in this last book.
Oh yeah, he is. He is. He's running into people who don't like him enough to want to do away with him.
Mm.
And he's got this one doggone author, I mean, one doggone guy who has figured out who he really is, but nobody
Hmm.
wants to believe him.
That's right. That's right. And that can open up a whole nother book as well, couldn't it?
Oh, it could. It could.
Easily.
Yes, easily. Yeah.
Now, when you were like putting your books together, Gil, for not just the writing material, but also the covers.
Yeah.
Did you come up with the covers yourself, or did you have someone assist you?
I had someone assist me, did a fantastic job, and I really like them. In fact,
Hmm.
I think the covers initially sell the books, particularly me. I just haven't spent any money marketing the books. And at first, everybody who responded just really liked the covers, So
Sure, sure.
it grabbed their attention, and so I'm really happy with that.
Now, how important do you feel the covers are?
Well, it makes me feel good, so I guess
Yes.
it's important to me to see something. But to me, each cover has to make a statement. So the first one you see an old George Washington sat in a modern day world, and in the second one you see an old George Washington seeing the new George Washington in a mirror, and
I
then
like those.
yeah, and so I think it tells a little bit about the book.
Yeah, because I think not just like for like your books, for example, but I think any book that someone is just like browsing,
Hmm.
and I think a cover should stand out. It at least grab their attention, and if they may not come to your book, but it's something I feel that it should stand out.
Yeah, Brad, and I'll tell you an interesting thing happened along the way. My first book was actually called Reviving POTUS 1. It didn't last long, and nobody seemed to want it. And other than a few friends, nobody bought it. And my editor said, I think you should change the name. And so I changed the name to Reviving George Washington. And at her request, which was an excellent request,
Hmm.
she said, lots of people research George Washington, and this could, and that took off. So it's the same book. The cover changed because
That's
the
right.
name changed, but other than that, that was the only thing, and it just took off. So I said, okay, I got to have George Washington name in
Yes.
each book.
That, that
It's
and that's why I asked, what does POTUS mean?
yeah,
Because I think a lot of people don't even know what that is. You know.
yeah, and that's why it didn't take off at first.
Yeah.
So anyway, that then it became the POTUS One series,
Very good. Yeah.
which was a byline underneath the titles.
Yeah. I think that was a fantastic move because you're right. Because people like to know the history of our presidents. I mean, because that opens up. I mean, endless stories and just the fact of our president.
Yeah, and during the election year, all of a sudden, and there was certainly a lot of discourse between the candidates, but I think it made a lot of people wonder what George Washington would think of all this. So,
Yeah. Yes.
you know,
Uh,
I got some readership out of that.
that's now for your love of history. Can you see yourself writing more of these series, and maybe on other presidents, but also other public figures?
You know, I've thought about that because I'm getting everybody wants one more in that series. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay, you've got him and you've worked his way up through to taking the highest office, but we want to see what he does in the highest office. You know, this kind of thing.
Sure.
But you know, I got caught. My editor said, and I think she was right with the very first book. You need to throw this out to 2025. Well, this is like 4 years ago. She says you need to get it past all the people who are in politics now. Otherwise, you've got to be talking about what they're doing if you're going to be accurate. And so that's what I did. And so it's kind of now it's true fiction if I get out and bring him in and say he's going to be the president now, what he's dealing with now, because I don't know what now is going to be like in 2032.
That's right.
I mean, I got to just make it all up, and it's easier. I think in my last book, I talked about because it came out just before they had all that problem with Kevin McCarthy getting to be the Speaker of the House, and I mentioned I don't want to go through this again where we have all that problem that Kevin had. All right,
Right.
so that made it up to date that far, but I don't know how I can get to that book. But I am interested in maybe thinking about bringing someone else in, maybe someone not political at all. You know, maybe some other famous
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
It would be fun.
Because you can actually take this your book really any direction.
In my very first book, um, in the second part, Dr. Pallador Montgomery goes to a conference and he meets someone in Europe. And I kind of set the stage and planted the seed there because this person claims to have done something similar. And so he asked the man if he would, what his problem was. He said he didn't feel like he was at liberty to talk about it. And he says, I don't think either of us should because it wasn't known yet.
Oh,
No, the public never knows how this happened.
yeah, that's right.
And in fact, they don't know that this George Washington is the real George Washington. But I kind of set the stage. I could then pick up with that guy and whoever it is that he revived. You see,
Yes.
if I wanted to. But the seed's been planted.
Now, have you started any new book, Gil?
Actually, I finished another book. I told you about my niece,
Yes.
and she writes. I call them the Hallmark romance series. You know, that kind of series, and been very successful with it. And I had an idea of a book for her, and I started putting it down, and before I knew I was writing it, and it was pretty good. You know, so I've let a couple of people read it, and I said, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to send it off to her, see what she thinks of it. So that's where that one is right now. So now I've written in two
Yes.
genres.
So let's keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm working on another one that's going to be kind of a drama type or a suspenseful CIA type book. You know?
Ah,
So now I'm just testing myself, Brad. I'm just
sure.
trying to figure out, well, what is it I can do? You know, because I've got this great imagination and the ability to make it seem plausible.
And
Which is what lawyers do, by
that's
the way,
right.
Brad. You know, they take the wildest situation and make it seem
That's
plausible all the
right.
time.
You get creative, right?
Yes.
But the sky's the limit, and you can do it. And you
Yeah.
proved you can do it.
It's fun. I enjoy it. I can't sit still, so I'm not anybody that in the afternoon is going to sit and watch anything on TV. I
Yeah.
got to have something to do. So if I've already played golf or tennis or pickleball or something, I'm going to still be doing something until I go to bed at night.
Yeah,
So
because especially living in the villages, if you can't find something to do, you're in trouble.
you are. You don't belong here, really. To be
That's
honest with
right.
you. You're paying for amenities you don't need.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
Now, for once you had your books completed, well, let's go back to your first book. Now, was it hard to market it?
I would say that it's never actually been marketed. So, but the good thing is, a lot of my neighbors in the villages, I think you have a little advantage in the villages. A lot of my neighbors bought the book and they've taken it back to Indiana and all over the country from where they come from, because a lot of them are snowbirds,
Sure.
and they shared it with other people. And the interesting thing is that my second and third book outsell my first book. Now, you wouldn't think that would be possible, because who's going to want to start in the middle of a series? But I checked with Amazon and they said, well, that really means that your first book is popular and everybody's giving it free to somebody else
Oh,
to read. So then they're going to want to read the second one because you've got them hooked, and the third one, and so on. And that's why the second and third one are picking up. And
no,
so that's the sum total of my marketing. But it's been a few years now, and that first one's sales now just are starting to pick up again. So I'm over the people I know who buy it
okay.
to people I have no idea who they are buying it. And so
Now, do you feel like it's in waves, kind of, or
I think sometimes, and I'm trying to figure out times of year. I think this is a good time of year, and I have a group here in the villages who like to go on these cruises, and they're always asking, "I'm going on a cruise. I need a book." And so they're always so there. I've actually got requests to get this last book published.
and you know
Uh,
something? You know the biggest thing too, and which I've done, is like when you go on a cruise, take your books with you, and
Good idea.
even if you donate them to the ship,
Uh
because
huh.
you figure you got people all walks of life on the ship, and they like to look
You
at their
do.
library,
That
and
is a great idea, Brad.
absolutely, I mean that's part of just like with marketing, you carry business cards,
Mm-hmm.
take them wherever you go,
Mm-hmm.
even to the bank, to the grocery store, post them.
Yep. Well, I've got my books are now at the high school
There you
library.
go, awesome.
And we had a group of authors who approached them, and they have to pre-approve your book. They don't. So mine were approved, and they're on display, and they're available for the students to read if they want to. But I talked to my niece about marketing, and even though she is tomorrow could put out a book and sell 100,000 in a heartbeat, she spends over $20,000 per book on marketing expenses. And she says, if you're willing to do that, then it's going to really take off.
That's
But if you're not willing to do that,
right.
then it might slow roll itself out there, but it's going to take a while because it's all word of mouth, and
That's
people who like
correct.
to read hand it to somebody else.
That's correct. And I've mentioned this before that as an author, and once you're finished writing your book, that's just the beginning.
Yeah,
Because
that's right.
because it's all up to you. Because you're considered a brand now. You're an author. People look at you as a brand. You're someone selling something. So you're like a business.
Well, I mean, Brad Hazlett might invite you onto his podcast.
That's correct. That's right. But you're right though. Every little bit helps.
Yep, I have that. You have some signings. You have my book is right this minute over at Barnes and Noble.
Is that the one in
And
the villages there?
yeah,
Awesome. Very good. Yes.
yep. And so there are some things you can do for free, but I'm considering going audio.
Okay.
I haven't made that decision yet. That's kind of a costly conversion process. But the interesting thing is there's millions of books, and the number of audiobooks is like maybe 1% of the actual number of books that are produced. It's very few are, it's thousands of titles, but
Sure.
from a global perspective. And a lot of the guys that I know, golfers and whatnot, they have their wives tell them about the book and that because they just don't read. And there are some people who just physically can't read anymore. You know, I mean,
Sure.
they're too old, or their eyes don't work right, or whatever. And so I am toying with that idea.
And it's a good idea because let's say for example, like you said, people are golfing or just being out and about, they
Yep.
have the audio book,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
and it's and or just relaxing, and just listening. Some people like that too, where they don't have to worry about having the hard copy in front of them too,
That's right. That's right.
or an ebook. Same. I mean, it's the same.
Hmm.
There's different avenues to explore.
So I've got the paperback, the hardcover, and the ebook.
Very nice.
So I've got those. So if I add the audio, I've got it taken care of.
Yeah, that's awesome, Gil. Now, do you have a website, Gil?
I do. It's called itsgilhudson.com.
And then that's where they can purchase your books and learn more about
Yeah,
you.
yeah, learn about each book, and then also we'll flip them down right to the Amazon site to push the button.
Excellent. Very good. Now, when is your next event? Is that going to be at the Villages though, coming up?
That's going to be January. Well, yeah, in a couple weeks on a Sunday, we're going to have the big expo,
Yes, yes.
and so I will be there.
Fantastic.
And I have a friend of mine who made a really really neat item that people love for books. I don't know if I can step away from this or not,
Yes,
but if
you can.
I can,
Of
I can
course.
bring one in and show it to you.
Of course, absolutely.
Take me 2 seconds.
Sure, no problem.
Okay,
Oh, very good.
so this is what he's developed. It's a pretty item. It goes like this, and so you're by your bed at night and you're reading, and you want to remember where you were. You put this on your last page, and of course you got this little drawer here with your reading glasses. I don't know if you can see them.
That is cool.
So and it's very well done. It's very nice piece. So I bought a few of them, and every time I put my books on those, um, it draws people over. They want to know what that is, And so I told my buddy, I says, I'm not going to get into book. I can't make them. I don't know how to make them. I said, but I want him to give me some cards, so I'll have 3 or 4 of those maybe to sell there. But beyond that, I will have cards that I can give out for people who are interested in that. But that's the point. When
Yes,
people come, is they come over, then they talk about your book, and
absolutely.
and uh, and you get a chance to give them some brochures and things to take home. And
And especially, does this look familiar?
that. Yes, it does.
and things like that too are perfect at book
Hmm.
signing events.
Yep. Yep.
Just the bookmarks, the business cards, and I like the tier book display you have.
Yep.
That's nice too.
Yeah, you got to have that and a little light,
Yeah,
something to catch their attention. And I'll tell you, I've got a little secret. Everybody has the little candy jars,
that's right.
but I go over here to Russell Stover. If you got the best candy, they'll find a reason to come over and chit chat with you a
That's
little bit.
right.
But first of all, everybody there at that show must be interested in reading, or they wouldn't even come to this.
Well, that's true. Absolutely right. And I do want to mention especially your books are on the first president of the United States,
Hmm.
and you brought up Mount Vernon, and
Hmm.
and have you been there before?
I have, yes,
Yes,
certainly.
and then this is one of the books too that I picked up.
Oh yeah.
It's on Mount Vernon,
Uh-huh.
and I think, if someone has not been there, they can learn so much on George Washington, not just as a president, but as an individual.
Yes, yes. Oh, I should tell you this very interesting fact. So, there's a girl here named Judy Laurento, and they're villagers, and they've been villagers longer than I've been villagers. So, she read my first book, And then she says, you know, my ancestors sold a piece of property to George Washington.
Oh my gosh.
I said, really? And she produced, and I have it here, a photocopy of the actual deed. And so I wove that into my book.
There you
So
go.
she was reading a pre-published version of my book. And so this guy who's figuring out who George is, George, during a tour of Mount Vernon and pretending to be somebody else, actually tells this guy, well, you haven't got it right because I bought this piece from so and so and this piece from so and so. And later on, he thinks and he searches and he searches and he says, no one in history has ever written about that. And of course, I had to search and find out it's not written about. The way you'd find out about it, you'd have to go to the clerk's office in that county and look up the transfer.
Ah.
So he's saying, how would he know about that? And that's what gets him going. So I take that. There's one other thing I do, Brad, that is kind of interesting. I get people's permission to use their name as a character in my book,
There you go.
and they love it. And of course, I don't use any of them for the villains, but I try to pick somebody who's close in character to the person I'm portraying in the book. And then I ask them if they want. And I tell them they can then read it. And if they don't like it, I'll take their name or I'll change it. But everybody seems to like to be mentioned. So I
Oh, of
probably got
course.
50 or 60 different people I know are in these books.
See, the sky's the limit, Gail. See.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But I have to say, Mount Vernon was an awesome experience. My parents and I, and my wife, we all went there and we explored all that, and it was just, if you have not been there, that's really, you have to.
Yes. Yeah,
There's so much history and just well preserved.
it is. It is. And when I described the scenes in the book, I had it up on my computer, the whole diagram, the rooms, and like he went from here to here. I wanted to make sure that if I'm saying he's going from here to here, he
Yes,
could.
that's
And
right.
the little well in the cellar, that I describe is actually there, and
Yes.
how they preserved ice back in the day is what I learned at Mount Vernon, and so
Eh,
you're right. Seeing it firsthand really helps.
oh yeah, and especially on the backside of Mount Vernon and looking over the 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 river.
Yes.
It,
Don't.
yeah, thank you. Yes, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
You know,
It is. It is. It is. It is very beautiful. So
and I'm glad that you've been writing on that because I think it's history, but it's creativity as well. You know.
it's fun. I like to keep it. I everything I do, I research. So, for example, if I were to tell you that this guy was a Hungarian, I would have researched what Hungarian names are. I wouldn't use just any name.
Right.
If
Yes.
I say he's riding down a certain road in Washington D.C. and sees something, then that means I've been on Google Maps and I've looked at it and I've said that. I mean, people could follow the trail that I set out in this.
Yes.
It bothers me to have things inaccurate.
That's right.
And
Well,
I've read novels that I read a novel about the Outer Banks, and they describe something that since I've been there so often, I said, well, that's not there. I mean, what are they talking about? And this kind of thing. I don't like that. I like everything to be, oh yeah, that's right.
your background, is actually in you, and so you have to have it
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Well, and I have to say this has been a fantastic listening to you and your journey, and I wish you the very best in your journey and creating more
Well,
wonderful
thanks,
books.
Brad.
And
It looks like you've got a little experience doing what you're doing.
well, thank you. I enjoy it. It's as an author myself, but also helping others.
Well, you're doing a good job, and it's quite a service, and I can't wait to hear it.
Well, thank you so much, Gil, And I wish you the very best. And please keep me in the loop of any new books coming out or even
Okay.
movies.
All right. All right. We'll do
And
that.
also in a couple weeks, good luck on that too.
Okay. Thank you. And so when will we be, when can I hear this podcast?
You can actually hear it probably tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Yes. So
All right.
I will take care of you, and everyone else will be able to enjoy it as well.
Good. How long are your podcasts up?
They're on YouTube.
Okay. Forever. So kind of thing, you know. All
Yes,
right. Good
yes.
deal. Thank you so much. I'll advertise you.
Well, thank you so much, Gil.
All right.
And you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too, Gil. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.